Hi there, everyone. It's Brit Simon here. Good morning to those in Australia, I guess, right? Or Oceania region. I actually thought this is a little bit later than I would normally do a live stream, but I thought this time, I think it's coming up to 8:45 in Australia, so I thought this might be a useful time for people in that time zone. And I had just the other day posted a video explaining my thoughts about where the final numbers would be for Oceania region. So I don't know if anyone would have questions about that, and if they wanted to ask questions, that would be fine. I don't expect many people will be around because it's an odd time of day for me to go live for my normal viewers. But if anyone's around and they'd like to ask me questions, I'm more than happy to take those questions. Okay, so and also let me just, in case we do need to present, let's just get the screen ready. Okay, so let's see if we, let's get that. We'll just do that. Okay, we'll just switch back to this. So here we go. How can I use my phone for the pictures, says MKS. Phones these days have got pretty good cameras on them, right? So some phones are so good that you could almost do a selfie and, you know, hold the phone kind of at arm's length and take a picture of yourself. And that would be kind of okay, but your arm is kind of like in the way, and it's, you know, it's not ideal. If you have a selfie stick, if you've got like an extension, then a phone is a very good way to take a photo. You worry less about the phone or the equipment you take the photo with. The equipment isn't such a big deal. Finding the right location for the photo, reasonably well lit, but not too much sun, preferably against a white plain background with no detail on the background, so very plain texture on the background. And if you can achieve that background, then you can produce a photo that's perfect for the instructions for DV Lottery. You can produce that photo very easily and for free. You can do it yourself. I've created a video that explains how to do that. And so if you just check my video library on YouTube and go back a few videos, you'll see those ones that were instructions for the DV Lottery DV 2026 entry. Okay, so in the last couple of weeks, I've refreshed those videos. All right. How is Iraq Embassy? Not very active in DV 2024. How they'll be in DV 2025, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We don't have any data yet, right? So people making assumptions. I know there are people, for example, getting excited about Addis Ababa and other people getting disappointed about Nairobi. And to be perfectly honest, nobody should be making any judgments at all about how good or bad any embassy is doing, because we have no data, and we're not going to have any data until January the 1st. So if you're making your assumptions based on rumor, that's not a very good way to, to actually get to the truth, right? What is the online link for registration? Rather than me typing it in, it's very simple. dvprogram.state.gov. That's it. dvprogram.state.gov. When we expect to announce AF35K in Manila Embassy, AF35K probably won't be current until, maybe February or March. So probably around about that time. As to the embassy, whether they have any backlog or anything else like that by that time, I don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. Where do you think Asia case number would end up for DV 2025? I'm not going to make a prediction about that. I just posted a video about Oceania. The reason that I'm able to make a prediction already for Oceania, I explained in that video, is because the distribution of cases is very similar all throughout the number range. Asia is not like that, nor is Europe, nor is Africa. And so I don't think we have enough data to make those sort of determinations at the moment. Now, I will say this. We think Asia numbers are up to about 30,000. So if your case number is Asia 29,000 or 28,000, something like that, you're obviously at risk, right? It should be no surprise to you that you're at risk. They went current to 27,500 last lottery period, but this lottery period has less visas available by about 6%, about 3,000 visas left, less. And also in Asia, the number went to 27,500, but the selectees were there up until about 45,000, 44,000. So, if there's going to be a cutoff for sure. And if you are in a high case number like 28, 29,000, 30,000, that sort of thing, you're very much at risk. That should be obvious, right? You shouldn't even need to ask, frankly. It's just obvious. Precious says, my question is, I forgot to check the DV results until last week, and then I submitted my DS260. Will this impact me? My case number is AF27K. My embassy is UK. No, it won't impact you at all. You're not too late. Your case number may become current, so other people may go before you to interview, but that doesn't matter. As soon as your DS260 is processed and your case number is current, then an interview will be scheduled for you. You haven't lost a thing. You haven't lost any time. You haven't lost a thing. Okay? Congratulations, by the way, on getting selected. Paula says, I was born in Zimbabwe, but I am South African citizen from the age of 2. I was just born in Zimbabwe. Can I use my South Africa passport? Yes, you can use a South Africa passport, but when you enter the lottery, you haven't mentioned whether you've won the lottery or whether you're just talking about entering the lottery. When you enter the lottery, you have to give your true place of birth, Zimbabwe. There is no difference between the chance of selection between the two countries mentioned, Zimbabwe and South Africa. So there is no advantage to trying to put South Africa down anyway. And the instructions clearly say that they want your birth country of birth, which is Zimbabwe. So that's what you would list. And on your birth certificate, I assume it mentions the place of birth as being a town or city or area of Zimbabwe. So you'll only be able to prove that you were born in Zimbabwe. The fact that you have a South African passport makes no difference, Paula. Okay? Kofi says, hi, hello, Simon. After this VB, can you help estimate when 2025 AF29K will go current? I should be interviewed in Freetown. Yeah, so again, it's very difficult to make sort of estimates at this time. If you've been paying attention to the visa bulletin, you would see that the first visa bulletin was issued for 15,000 for Africa. The second visa bulletin for Africa was still at 15,000, right? And that was a big surprise to people. And they're wondering, okay, well, how's that work, etc. And then the third visa bulletin, hey, presto, it's still at 15,000. So we've had 3 visa bulletins at 15,000. That doesn't mean that it's never going to increase from 15,000. Of course it will. But it means that we shouldn't make silly predictions without understanding the data. And what you're asking me to do is exactly that, make a silly prediction without having the data. So I'm not going to do that precisely. I'll just say to you, it's probably going to be early 2025 before you actually get current. Maybe January, maybe February, maybe even March. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. Mustafa says, my case number was 100K and KCC made a mistake. They sent to another embassy. I got my visa to that embassy. Why my previous embassy even didn't reach 60K? Okay, I don't really understand that, but it sounds like you did get your visa, right? And it sounds like KCC made a mistake that helped you, frankly. So that's good. Ron Mello. OC 258 something case number probably doesn't have a chance considering the previous video for the OC region. Yeah, I'm glad you've seen the video, Ron. Look, predictions are difficult to make, but the video that I showed for Oceania, there's very little that could change in that region that would impact the numbers in that region one way or the other. It's probably, and I think I was pretty optimistic in that video, by the way. I was optimistic. There are 3 factors, as I mentioned in the video. I think I only really stressed 2 of them, but there are actually 3 factors that I mentioned in the video that are all going to work against you in a sense. They're going to push for a lower number. The 3 factors are the reduction of visas of about 6% that are globally available. That doesn't just impact Oceania, that's going to impact everybody, right? There's only going to be 52,000 or a little bit less than 52,000 visas available in DV 2025, whereas normally there's 55,000 or thereabouts, right? So about 3,000 visas less for a start. Second point is Oceania in DV 2024 was allowed to run away and massively exceed its quota, its own quota. I'm not saying that can't happen again, but the more likely thing is that it won't exceed the quota as much as that, right? So the quota is lower. It probably won't. It probably won't be allowed to exceed the quota as much as it did in 2024. Those two factors work against and push down for the number. And the other thing is that the last visa bulletin caused a lot of chaos, and that chaos meant that some cases that were current up to 2,700 were skipped. And so I think we've got 619 cases actually got scheduled out of the 1,157 cases that were made current, right? 1,157 were made current. 619 of them actually did get scheduled. That gap, that difference between those two numbers, is bigger than it would normally be, and the gap is bigger because of the chaos of the last minute increase in the visa bulletin. And there were numbers that were skipped. There were cases that were skipped, and some other chaos went on. Also, all the embassies didn't go all the way. Suva did an amazing job, and did the best in that region. But we can't assume that Suva would do the same again. We can't assume that the same chaos would exist, and there are impacts on the number of visas. So, all in all, afraid to say, Ron, yeah, it's not looking good for your number. Put it like that. You're probably going to be at least, I think, 500 or 600 numbers above where the final cutoff comes. I could be wrong though. Okay, so you unfortunately you've just got to wait and see until probably July. You'll know in the middle of July whether I'm right or whether the final visa bulletin actually does something wacky. And they've done wacky things before, Ron, so it could happen. Kadar, the continent of Africa is not very developed in East Africa, right? Why are these people being persecuted? Who's persecuting them? What are we talking about? We're talking about DV lottery. Are you saying that the countries in Africa don't get very many selectees? Is that what you're saying? I mean, because the scope of my conversation is really just about DV lottery. But and then you're talking about persecution. I'm not quite sure why you're talking about persecution. There is no persecution from the DV lottery point of view on any of the African countries. Quite the opposite, frankly. Africa as a region gets more visas than any other region. Okay, how's that persecution? If you're saying that there's persecution that is directed only at East Africa and not West Africa, well, there are a lot more people that apply for the lottery from West Africa and even South Africa than East Africa. That's not persecution. That is common sense. You have an opportunity to enter the lottery. It's a free lottery. Anybody can enter. They just need a little bit of brain cells, a little bit of gray matter. They need access to a computer or a phone, and they need to be able to take a photo and tell the truth. Now, people in East Africa are welcome to apply in millions if they want. If they can't get to a computer or use a phone because of the type of country it is, or the countryside, the underdeveloped aspect of the region, I understand that. But again, it's not to do with the DV lottery. That's just a general situation with that region of Africa. You can't call that persecution. Persecution meaning, that region is somehow being differentiated. That's not true at all. I tend to be a little sensitive about these sort of statements because, I've been doing this 12, 13 years. I wouldn't be involved in something that I believed was differentiating between people, that was in somehow showing racism or bigotry towards this area or that area, or some sort of even tribalism or anything like that. I wouldn't be associated with it. I would see it as an unfair program, and I wouldn't spend a lot of my time, as I do, helping people in that program. That's not how I see it, and so I spend a lot of my time. So yeah, I'm a little sensitive about that. Mustafa said, that's amazing lottery. Yep, it is an amazing lottery. Benacel says, thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Brit Simon. Just wish to know your opinion. I'm a 2025 winner with 62.5 for the Africa region. Should I be worried or perhaps still early? Your number's probably fine. The African numbers go up to about 100,000, maybe a little bit higher than 100,000. The only cause for concern that you might have is if you in a country which could be cut off, such as, for example, Egypt, or if you're in a country where the embassy underperforms, and you need to pay attention to that latter thing. Very important. So we'll have more information about that in January. But quite honestly, there were people that didn't listen to what I said last January, last February, last March, that completely lost their green card because they didn't listen to me or they listened to other people. And I could have saved their chances, or they could have saved their chances if they had simply listened to what I was saying. It's not like these things are unpredictable. We can predict them once we have the data. And so it was clear that there were some embassies that were not going to work. And I said, unless you get the hell out of that country, you're not going to get your green cards above this number. Addis, for example, I warned people above 30,000 very early on. I warned people above 30,000, you're not going to get your green card if you stay in Addis in DB 2024. And some people then later were surprised that what I said came true. So pay attention is what I'll say to you. Could save your green card. Charlotte says, if I was selected from the UK but now live in Canada, will they let me interview in Canada? Absolutely, yes, they will. It doesn't. The place where you process your case is absolutely unimportant. So yeah, they can do that for sure. Mohammed, is it okay to change the background of the DV photo with the Photoshop? It is, but be very careful that you do it in a way that's very professional and very accurate and doesn't change the appearance of the person in any way at all. Okay, you mustn't touch up blemishes. You mustn't tidy up the hair. You mustn't, remove red eye. If you've got any of those sort of problems with the photo, take another photo. If all you're doing is changing the background, and you can manage to do that in a way that does not change the person's appearance in any way, then it's acceptable to do that. People read the instructions, and they only partially read the instructions, and they see things like, you must not digitally alter the photo or whatever, and they misunderstand it. If you read the instructions properly, what I just said about not changing the appearance is what the instructions say. But you have to actually, read the instructions properly, not misunderstand them. Okay. When I'm transferring my location interview, is it compulsory to address physical address? Not all the time, no. Some embassies will still want you to be local, but the guidance, essentially the rules for the DV program recently were changed a few months ago to allow for people that are physically present within an area being interviewed in that area. What does that mean? Let's say I lived in London, but I wanted to interview in Germany, in Frankfurt, right? As long as I could show that I was legally entitled to be physically present, or I was physically present in Germany, and that I could show that I had permission to legally stay there for as long as it takes to get my interview, then that's enough. I don't have to show a residence permit necessarily from the point of view of the instructions. And KCC and the embassy should be okay with that. However, sometimes KCC are not really respecting that, and sometimes some of the embassies are not really respecting that new guidance. And so, in that case, I still say, the safest way to change the embassy is not never ask for a change of embassy. Instead, unlock your DS-260 and change the address to an address that would cause you to be scheduled at a different embassy. That is by far the safest way. But to make it truthful, you have to actually physically be there, and you should have the permission to stay there for as long as it takes. Okay. Sharam, if a child is born after the interview at the embassy and receiving the visa, what should be done? Okay, so after the interview at the embassy and receiving the visa, I just clarified, if you Google the words Brit Simon newborn, just those two words, Brit Simon newborn, you'll find a blog article of mine. And what you're talking about is what I call scenario 3. I lay out, I think, 4 or 5 different scenarios, and your timing is scenario 3. I just added notes to that this morning because essentially the situation is this. If the interview has been completed and the mother and father have had their visas, and then the baby comes, right? Technically, that baby doesn't need a visa to enter the USA. There's a process where the parents can take the baby on the plane, take the baby to America with them upon their first entry, and that baby will be processed for a green card at the airport. It will happen automatically. They don't have to pay the interview fee. They don't have to pay the medical fee and everything else. Some embassies don't understand that, and some airlines don't understand that, right? And so if you Google the blog page that I just mentioned, you will see I've put 2 instructions, one to fight with the embassy and the other one to fight with the airline. Because some embassies say, no, we're not going to let you just take your baby without an interview and a medical. And that involves the parents paying hundreds of dollars unnecessarily. And so it's completely unnecessary. The law is very clear on this. The instructions to the embassies is very clear, and I've included those instructions and instructions on how to find those instructions in my blog article, right? And I may even have, no, let's see, Brit Simon newborn. Yeah, I'll just put this. I'll put this in the chat address here. I'm just going to post this in the chat address. That is the link to the instructions. So read that article, look for scenario 3, and scroll down to the bottom of the page, and it shows exactly how that's allowed. It also has instructions on how to tell the airline that you don't need a visa for the baby. All you need is the passport for the baby and the birth certificate for the baby, and then you enter the USA and you're fine. In some cases, the airlines want you to have a travel foil, but it's all detailed on that blog article I just posted in the chat. Okay? Anwar says, I've done the DV for me and my family. There are 5 of us. Awesome. But what if I decided to go on my own first, to try and build up there first and then call them later? Would this be okay? The initial cost for 5 is a big risk. Absolutely. Yeah. So when you are issued with your visa, you have 6 months. It's actually 6 months from the day of the medical. So let's say you did the medical 2 weeks before the interview, right? Fairly standard. After the interview and you get your visa, you're going to have something like 5 or 5.5 months of validity on all of your visas for you and for your family members, right? You can, if possible, if you're able to leave your life as quickly as possible, you could fly as the principal applicant. This only works for the principal applicant, right? The principal applicant can fly to America, can enter, and then have the other family members join. But the other family members have to join before their visas expire, right? So you've got up to 5 months or 5.5 months in my example for all of them to get to the USA. You mustn't delay that. But by the principal going first, the principal can earn some money, save some money really quickly, work damn hard, get all the money together, and that means that they can pay for the airline tickets for the other 4 members, right? So yeah, you can do all of that, but it only works for the principal, okay? It can't be if your wife, for example, is the winner, the principal applicant, you can't go ahead of the principal. The principal can go ahead of the derivatives, but the derivatives cannot go ahead of the principal, or the principal can go with the derivatives, but never derivatives first. Okay. All right. Siwali, I'm in Qatar, DV25, Doha, case number 81K. When will I expect the 2NL? Right at the end of the program. If you get current at all and your number is high enough to warrant some concern about that, but if you get current at all, it'll be right at probably the final months, maybe July of next year, 25, maybe June of next year, maybe, but more likely July. And you may not get current at all. There is a risk there. Okay. What's new in 2024? Nothing at all. DV 2024 is over. So if that's what you mean, nothing new. There are going to be no further interviews in DV 24. Any cases in administrative processing are not going to be processed. They won't be given their visas. There's absolutely no way that any further activity can happen in DV 2024. They've moved on to DV 2025 now. Alfred, please, can my spouse use the picture I use for her as a derivative, and can she also use my picture as her derivative? Yes. Husband and wife, you take a picture of each, right? Husband enters the lottery with the spouse photo, and the spouse enters the lottery with the husband's photo, both as derivatives. So each one of them has got to use both the photos, right? And then have a photo for the spouse. Same thing with the kids. You can take pictures of the kids, and both of them can use the same pictures in that year. All of what I just said relates to just that year. You can't do it from previous years' photos. It has to be for that year. The photos have to have been taken within the last 6 months prior to entering the lottery. Okay. Mansour, is it acceptable to apply for DV with your family while they will not emigrate with you? Yeah, you absolutely have to. This isn't a question you should wonder about. When you're entering the lottery, you have to list your family. If you don't list your family and they find out you've got family, you will be disqualified, 100% certain, right? So, so it is perfectly acceptable for you to say, okay, I'm going to enter the lottery. Here's all my family members. Here's my spouse. Here's my 2 kids, or whatever it is, right? And then later you say, well, I'm only going to go by myself because I'm going to leave my spouse and kids at home, and I'll sponsor them later. And then maybe they'll join me in 2 or 3 years. And in the meantime, we're going to be apart, right? That's all okay. It's not a great plan, to be honest. It's not a very good idea. And I'm not recommending that at all. I think it's a silly idea to split up a family. It makes you less likely to succeed in America because you're going to be sad, frankly. You're going to be away from your wife and kids. You're much better off as a family unit, honestly. But if that's the only way that you can do it, if you have to make that sacrifice to make it work, then yes, you've all entered the lottery. You fill in your DS-260 form for you only, and you don't fill in DS-260 forms for the wife and kids. As I say, it makes me sad when people do that because perhaps they don't understand how long they're going to be split up. Because if you don't take them with DV lottery, you then later have to sponsor them to bring them to America. And that later process is going to be much more expensive than the DV lottery, and it will take a number of years. And so you are putting yourself into a position where you're going to be apart from your family for several years, 3, 4 years, perhaps 5 years. So it's not a very good idea, but is it acceptable? Is it possible? Yes, it's acceptable or possible. Yeah, just not very smart. Unless you've got no other option. I don't mean to judge people. I mean, look, in some countries, the price of an airline ticket might represent 3 or 4 months' salary, right? It might be completely unobtainable to say I've got 5 kids and a wife, and I'm going to buy everyone an airline ticket, and I'm going to go to America. And then the expenses of living in America while you're getting yourself established, much harder. I understand it's much, much harder. And quite honestly, I wish I was hundreds of $1 million millionaire that I could establish some sort of a fund and give, loads of money to help people in that position. But I can't. And therefore, you have to make tough choices for yourself. Do you Is there any way you can take the family with you? That's, you just have to work that out and see if it can be done. Okay. Hands-on Coding says, hi Simon, DB25 AF20K. I asked KCC to unlock my DS260 of an update. Then I add my LinkedIn account. Will that lead to some delay? No, it won't. There's no delay for unlocking. People are still confused about that. I'll leave that one alone. But it's not true. There is no delay for unlocking. My number is 2025 EU 6400 Warsaw. Do you think that we could be scheduled in January? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Vara Vonka. After submitting DS260, can we amend if there's any changes? You can. You don't have to update every little change, right? What you should do is if you realize you've made a mistake on your DS260 with your name, your date of birth, some critical information about your country of birth or something like that. Perhaps you've missed off your maiden name if you were born with a different name. Those sort of identifying factors, those things that identify you to allow the government to do a background check on you. Those are the things that you should absolutely correct, right? If you realize that the address of the school that you attended 20 years ago, or the name of the school that you attended 20 years ago, if you realize that those things are wrong, or the school has changed its name, for goodness sake, don't unlock the DS260 for that. That's ridiculous. If you change your job, you don't need to unlock that for that. If you move addresses, you don't need to unlock for that. You could do, and in some cases you want to, but you don't have to update most of those things. So, making a mistake on a historical address, making a mistake with an old employer, not a current employer, or making a mistake with an old school record or something like that. None of those things are important enough to require you to update your DS260 to change it. Okay, so you exercise some common sense about that. Should I and my derivative photo be labeled with our names before applying? It doesn't make any difference to their system, but it may mean that you don't screw it up, Jerry, because I have known people to reverse their photos. They've got two photos in a folder ready to upload. They do the DV entry and they pick the wrong photo for the wrong person. And in that case, they are going to be disqualified later on. And so if it helps you to name the photos according to which person it is to avoid that sort of mix-up, then yeah, absolutely do that. But the system itself doesn't care, right? It's only so that you don't make a mistake. Okay, my case number is 2025 AS14K, based in Paris. When can I expect my interview? Maybe in December, maybe January, not quite sure. You'll have to wait and see. Joe says, I unsuccessfully applied for US visit visa, and at the time of the application, I indicated that I am married, though we are not legally married. Good idea. Lie to the US government. That's great. See how that works out for you. Can I apply as single, yet I indicated I was married on the DS160? You've created a mess for yourself, haven't you? So, Joe, what I would say is the sooner you stop lying and start telling the truth, the better. You've lied before, and many people will say to me at this point, that's not a lie. Yes, it's a lie. It wasn't the truth? No, it wasn't the truth. There's only truth or lie, right? There's nothing in between, right? So, it's either true or it's not true, right? So you said you were legally married, but you weren't. And so now you must, if you truly are single, then you must say you're single. But for goodness sake, don't tell another lie. If you're actually married, for goodness sake, start telling the truth. Just always tell the truth. It's a really stupid idea to lie to a government that you want some benefit from. It's a really bad idea. And you may think it's unimportant, but it's not unimportant. This is, crazy. Okay, good luck with that. Tete, will Acro get better or worse with AF6K? I feel scared. I don't know. I don't know whether they're going to get better or worse. I find it hard to imagine they could be worse. So I don't know is the honest answer. I don't know how they're doing and I don't trust feedback from people at this point. Some people are rejoicing a little bit about Addis Ababa because I think there's a rumor that cases up to 9,000 have been scheduled in Addis. That may be true, but even if it is true, it doesn't mean all the cases up to 9,000 have been scheduled. So it could be that they go much slower from this point forward. We don't know. As for Accra, I haven't got any feedback on that. There's not enough cases being scheduled for us to really get the feedback. That's a little worrying. So we'll see. How many people from Afghanistan are interviewed annually at the US Embassy in Islamabad? I don't know. That's a question for that embassy. DED to pass grade 12. Do you need to pass grade 12? Yeah, you kind of probably do. But by the way you've written that, okay. Next thing is, do I have to? Okay. I was about to say you probably didn't pass grade 12 with the way that you wrote that question. But do I have to pass grade 12? Well, I don't know the education systems in the 200 countries there are around the world. What I would say is that you need to reach an education level that would allow you to enter university with no further education, no further tests or anything else like that. That is the equivalent level to a US high school graduate, and that is the level that they want to see for education background. It's typically for an American kid, the kid is about 18 years old and has achieved enough education to go straight into college, which is their word for university. So that's actually, that's the level you need. Okay. Excuse me. Have the 2NL issues been fixed by KCC? Yes, it appears it has. When the visa bulletin was published this week, the next day we heard of 2NLs being sent immediately. So that's normal. That's how it should be. It was not how it was between August the 6th and early October, when things actually started getting fixed, or late September, October, early October. So for about 7 or 8 weeks, there was a technical problem. We don't know the nature of that technical problem, but KCC did admit that there was a technical problem, which is what I had assumed. And now they're issuing 2NLs. That shows that the technical problem has been overcome. Okay. Is working as a barber acceptable as work experience in the diversity visa lottery? I don't think it is, no. If you Google my article, so use the word Brit Simon like a code word sort of thing. It helps the Google figure out that you want to look at one of my pages. So Brit Simon, work experience. Google those 3 words, right? It will take you to an article that describes how you check the work experience level needed for any job, right? Because not just any work experience is acceptable. You have to have 2 years of experience within the last 5 years at a job that requires 2 years of training or experience. Now, you might have got that job faster than the 2 years, but you need the experience. It's not the training or experience you need to show. It's the fact that you've done that job for 2 years. But does it take 2 years to learn to be a barber? No, it doesn't. And that's why I'm saying that it probably won't be a qualifying job, right? If you're a manager of a bank or something, then that might take 2 years of training to get to that level of work, and therefore that job qualifies. And if you've been doing that job for 2 years, then you can qualify even if your education is not sufficient. But being a barber, no, I don't think that will qualify. You're welcome to look it up with the words I said. Brit Simon, work experience. Okay. Please, I'm a winner. Okay, please, I'm a winner in DV25, but the photo which has been putted was with background intended to be dark. Might I disqualified during the interview for the reason which intended to be dark. So I don't know exactly what you mean here when you're saying about the background was intended to be dark. Was the photo edited? Because if you've got a dark background behind your photo, you're probably not even going to be selected. The initial draw process would probably whack you out and disqualify you. But if you've been selected, that means you went through that initial screening process, and that would suggest to me that the background was very light in color. So I don't quite understand your question. I think I'm missing something in your question there. Ahmed, if you want to rephrase your question, maybe I can give you a better answer. Paula, I want to enter the DV lottery. On my passport, my names are listed in a single line. So do I list them all in the first name and mark no middle names? No, don't do that. Right, so let's say you've got 5 names, right? The 5th name typically is your family or last name. And there's a special field for that in the DV lottery. Then the first name, the beginning of those 5 names, is probably what people mostly call you, right? In your case, it would be Paula, right? But Kingsbury is your last name. That's a family name. Everybody in your family will share that name, probably, Kingsbury, right? But not everybody in your family is called Paula, right? You might have a brother called Stephen. You might have, there could be different people, right? And so Paula is your first name. Anything between those 2 names are your middle names, right? So Paula would be your first name. Kingsbury would be your last name, and that, funnily enough, is normally listed first in these forms. And then if you have 2 or 3 other names, they go in the middle name section. If you don't have space for all of those names in the middle name section, not a big deal. You just list the ones that you can list, okay? Hitcham. I worked with a guy called Hitcham just recently. He was a nice guy. Hi, Simon. I have twins daughters, 6 months old. How can I apply for DV 2026? Very easy. You have to do an entry. One of the difficult things is that you have to take a photo. And in your case, they're going to be, because they're twins, right? They're going to be more or less identical. So the first thing is with babies, the way you take a photo of a baby that can't sit up for themselves and can't take direction is that you position a camera above the baby, looking down. The baby should be lying on a white plain sheet, and then you try and get them when their face is kind of looking at the camera, looking up to you, and definitely their eyes need to be open, right? And as long as you take a picture that's pretty good like that, that's okay. The twin daughters are going to look more or less the same. That doesn't really matter. When you turn up for the interview, you're going to have 2 identical looking babies, right? And it will be perfectly clear that you have told the truth. You haven't just taken a picture of one baby and then for the second baby, you took a picture of the first baby. As long as you don't do anything as silly as that, it'll be fine. Okay. So yeah, no problem. Good luck with your entry. How did Nairobi Embassy do in DV 2024? Up to what case number did they get to? Is it 80K or up to 122K? They went over 122K. They did the best performance of any embassy, certainly in Africa, probably any embassy in the world, arguably, right? So they did a fantastic job, and I'm immensely grateful for them to putting such a massive effort into it. They took all of the cases they should have taken, as far as I know, and they also took lots of cases from other countries. And so they worked tremendously hard and went all the way over, to the very highest number. In fact, I think they have taken the very highest number. I wonder if I got some data. Yeah, I do. Let me check the highest number that was issued. Let me just confirm that for you. I keep saying it's 122,515, but I haven't looked at that number for a while. 122. Oh, this is way old. No. So it's certainly over 122,000. So yeah, good job, Nairobi. Hi, Britt. How was Dakar? Dakar embassy performance in DV24. Not so good. I would suggest you have a look at Zarthisis's website. Let me just put that in the chat, DV charts, where you can get the data and have a look yourself, right? I haven't got the up-to-date data file available right now. So you can go and download it and check that data right there, okay? Hands-on coding us again. No, already answered that question. Paula, already answered your question. Delphine, thanks for everything, sir. I am DV 2018. Learned a lot from you, and now my brother just came with his wife and nephew. That's fantastic. I should have read about adding kids after visa issuance. You know what I mean, lol. Okay, I think if I just had a conversation with you through the Brit Simon blog, I think I might have just done that. Was this about Nairobi? Anyway, yeah. I don't remember your 2018 case, so I'm assuming you're talking about a current case. I'm pretty sure that's what it's about, right? Yeah, and they just came. Yeah, this was actually, Delphine. I'm gonna talk about this case, which may or may not be yours. So imagine a scenario where you just at the very end of the fiscal year, you are issued with a visa. That visa has a few months before you need to enter the country, and the woman is pregnant, right, at that time when they're issued the visa. They panic and think they have to get to America to have the baby in America because the fiscal year is going to be over and they won't be able to get a visa for the baby, right? And so they kind of panic and they get to America a few weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks before the baby is due to be born. They weren't able to get insurance, health insurance, and now they are forced with the, frankly, fairly tough position of working without healthcare insurance in America to have a baby. Now, if they get stuck with the cost, to have a baby in America costs about $25,000. If you go to a hospital when you're heavily pregnant, the hospital has a duty to try and look after you. They must save your life. They must help you, right? But they don't have to do extra things. They don't have to make it very comfortable. They don't have to do extra stuff, right? And as soon as they find out that you are unable to pay, there is some sort of state assistance that they will take money from, but they may also invoice you for the difference or for any money, and then you're stuck with a big medical bill. Now, medical bankruptcy or medical bill bankruptcy is the largest type of bankruptcy in America, and you can't deny that you've incurred those costs. So it's a very risky position that someone would put themselves into. It's a bloody mess, and frankly, it could have been avoided because, as I believe Delphine is alluding to, they could have just waited, and let's say the baby was born at the end of October, which is after the DV 2024 fiscal year. They could have waited for a few weeks. They could have emigrated to the States for the first time in November or December or January or what, as long as it's before the time, and that baby would have been processed like that instantly at the airport, just automatically, and it would have been totally fine. But yeah, the lack of knowledge or the lack of information out there. I mean, the government doesn't make this information readily available. It's a shame, and so people make bad decisions. And that's unfortunate. So I'm sorry about that. I hope it works out okay for you, and I hope or for them, and I hope they don't end up with a big medical bill. But the bills here are stupid. Yeah. Okay, how was Dakar? We talked about that. If it was just ended, my bachelor degree is that compulsory to have 2 years of job experience or not so? If I was just ended my bachelor degree. Okay. If you gained your bachelor degree at the end of a formal course of education, of secondary education, up to around about age 18, 17 or 18, and then you entered a degree program and then you gained your bachelor's, then yeah, that education should be fine. You don't have to have 2 years of work experience. Those are options. You either show that you meet the education requirement or you show the work experience requirement is met. You don't have to do both. If one is met, the other one you're not asked about. They always ask about education first because it is much easier to prove that you've met the education level. But if you try and prove you've met the education level and you can't, or they don't accept your proof or whatever, then having work experience back up is worthwhile. Okay. G-Man FX. Hi, I emailed KCC about the status of my case number 2025 AF11K and was told my DS260 has been processed. Does it mean I will get to NL soon? Maybe, but it depends on your embassy, right? If your embassy is not accepting enough cases, then you'll wait until they are accepting the cases. So it really depends which embassy you're at, okay? Henry, has the Monrovia embassy has the Monrovia embassy performing in the year 2024? They did okay. I don't think they did terribly well. I don't think it was really good. I don't think it was really bad. I think it was okay. But please do go and check the data. I put the link in a few minutes ago for Zarthisius' site. Okay. Yabella, I think you've asked questions before. You're in Cuba, right? I think you're in Cuba. Oh, maybe not. Maybe there's a different person. Hi, Simon. 2025 AF 1400, family of 6, and got approved. Oh man, already. Family of 6 and got approved on October 7th in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. That's amazing. That's like right at the beginning of the year. Thanks a lot for the relentless support. Well, it didn't take any time at all because you just did it immediately. You are amazing. I called you the only expert. Long live. Thank you. That's very kind of you. But congratulations. October 7th, one of the very earliest approvals, right? I think the first approval I actually heard of was on October 2nd, but yours is very close. And a family of 6. That's wonderful. I wonder what those kids are going to achieve in America. Can you imagine? That thrills me. The idea of all of these new immigrants going on and achieving great things in America. I love that. And so, yeah, good luck to you. Jesse, where is the option? Do they tick those with no high school degree but a 2-year qualified work experience when applying? Oh, you don't have to worry about that, Jesse, when you're applying. You pick the education level that you think best describes you, but it's not an important question at all. You don't have to do anything about work experience or anything else like that, okay? Let's see. Okay. Hello, Simon. I have a question. From the bottom of the picture to eye level, I have a little less measurement, but everything else in the picture is good. Do you think this is a disqualification? Again, it depends whether you've already been selected or not, right? If you haven't been selected, and what you're saying is that the photo is supposed to be here, your head, the top of your head to the bottom of your chin, that distance is supposed to be between 50% and 69%, I think it is. Is that right? Yeah. 50% and 69% of the overall height of the picture. Now, if that photo had you at 49% or 70%, that would be okay. But if your head is very, very small and it's less than, a lot less than half of the height of the picture, that could be a problem, and that could relate, end up in disqualification. But typically, I would expect that to be disqualified in the initial draw and before you're told you're a winner. And so you may not even have known you're a winner, right, at that point. But without knowing whether you've been selected or not, or you're just asking me about your selection chances, I can't really answer more precisely. Rosemary, I live in China, but a Ghanaian. What's a Ghanaian doing in China? I applied to the DV lottery with my husband, which I didn't include my son because he was born in the USA. I'm about to get cross, Rosemary. You did the right thing. You don't have to include a US citizen child or a US citizen spouse. So you did fine. You included your husband, but you didn't include your son. That's good. It's fine. You did the right thing. Katun Gai. Interesting name. Thanks for the good work you're doing. I have a master's degree in computer science. If I win the DV, will I be able to continue my career in the USA, or I have to study again? No, absolutely. You can continue your career. Now, a master's degree in computer science, at the place I work, we pretty much require, I think it's at least a master's degree. It might be a PhD. for technology jobs, for IT engineering jobs, right? The standard of education that we require is quite high, but we also prefer experience, right? So you've got a master's, that's good. That could help you with getting a job. But more importantly, have you had any experience? Because I know some of these youngsters, they got a master's, they got a PhD, and they're absolutely useless. They may be very book smart, but they lack common sense. And I have to, I run circles around these kids that have got higher education level than me, but they are completely useless because they've got no common sense or initiative. I don't know what the problem is sometimes, but they're just not very good. So, it's not all about the education. It's about experience and how you present yourself and everything else. But there is no place that says, there is no law that says someone without a degree cannot be, you can't be in IT or engineering if you don't have a degree. There's no law that says that. Companies may say that they only hire people with a master's or something like that. They can say that. That's their right. Okay. Hi Britt, can I select my interview location to a neighboring country if the embassy in my home country is not that active? They will look at your address, and without a clear understanding or expectation why you expect to be interviewed somewhere else, they'll probably just schedule they'll disregard your selection and schedule you or put you in line to be scheduled at your local embassy based on your current address. So the best thing you can do, frankly, if you realize that your current embassy isn't going to interview you, then you're better off to move to another country, in all honesty. When can I access the status check? It says invalid case number, January the 1st. It's not going to work until January the 1st, okay? You're not doing anything wrong. It is just not going to work until then. That's why we don't have the data, okay? My sister applied and have no high school degree, but have qualified work experience, so she ticked no high school degree. That's fine. No problem there. OC 1400, but we're not going for interview. What? 2025 OC 1400, but we are not going for interview. I applied to see if I was going to win, and I was with the first try. We ain't ready to move that year. You're a good teacher, Simon. Thank you. Well, that's interesting. I mean, it's not often. I mean, I know a lot of people win and then decide not to pursue it. And because you're from OC, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, because your chance of selection is so high that particularly if you're a married couple, if you kept applying for the next 3 or 4 years, you would be very likely to get selected again, one of you, as a couple. So if you don't feel you're ready now, you're perfectly welcome to just wait and keep applying when you feel you are ready. The other thing you could do is process your case now, get your green card, and then string it out for as long as possible, so that let's say you have an interview in, let's say, August of next year. You would then have until January the following year, 2026, to enter the USA for the first time. You would then be able to enter the USA and leave and stay out for 12 months, right? So then you could go back in January of 2027 and start living there. Or you could go back in January 2027, stay there for a week or two for a holiday, leave the country for another 6 months and go back middle of 27. You could even, keep it going until 28, So I don't know. You might want to just think about applying and getting it and then spinning it, stringing it out as far as possible, and then moving as late as possible by going and visiting America a couple of times. The cost of that for you will be very little. $300 for the interview or whatever, it's probably not going to stress you out very much. So that's a possibility. Anyway, is allowed when the date of birth certificate is not the same as my high school certificate date. Right. So people often say, I've got my high school certificate, the name is wrong, the date of birth is wrong, or some other information on the date of, on the on the high school certificate or the education certificate is wrong, and they think that's a problem. It's not a problem. If I want to know your date of birth, I'm going to look at the birth certificate. If I want to know your name, I'm going to look at the birth certificate and the passport, right? And those two things should be connected. The education certificate isn't the authoritative piece of information to prove your date of birth or your name. The only thing I'm looking for, if I'm a consular officer and I'm trying to figure out all your documents, is I'm looking to be sure that that education certificate is yours. That's the only thing I care about. I don't care if the date of birth is wrong. And in fact, they're very well aware that in some countries, particularly some African countries, people tend to move their name a little bit on the education records because of the rules about who pays for education and how late you can get education and that sort of thing. It's very common. And so, they're aware of that and they don't really mind that. That's not really a problem. But like I say, they're not looking for the birth certificate and the education certificate to match exactly, as long as they're sure that it is your education certificate. Okay. Okay. Luciana says, hi from Argentina. Bienvenidos. Okay. Annunciata. My sister win DV24. Until now, they didn't call them. We're wondering if it's over. Yes, it's over. It's finished. There are no further interviews. I don't know why your interview was missed, but it's over. It's finished, completely finished. They can't be interviewed. Okay. I want to play DV with my family. Accepted how? Yeah, just play. Just enter. Follow the instructions. You'll be fine. Abraham. I'm a winner of DV25. My case number is AF 31986. You don't have to give us the precise number. You would normally say 31XXX, so that it's kind of hidden a little bit, right? You don't need to be precise, especially when you also give your full name. Don't give us the combination of your full name. Anyway, the 2NL has not been sent to me yet. Of course not. So I tried to check on the visa status check website, but couldn't. Yeah, you can't check on the visa status website until January 1. But you're also not current yet. So there's no way they would have sent you a 2NL. You have to wait. And while you're waiting, go to my blog at britsimonsays.com and read the basic questions, because you obviously don't understand the process yet. So go ahead and do that. And from now on, maybe not give your complete name and your complete case number, okay? Don't, for goodness sake, mention also your birthday and your case number confirmation and all this. So Rosemary, my husband has older kids. Rosemary, you asked earlier. My husband has older kids living in Africa with his ex-wife, married to another man, and we live in China, but didn't include them in the DV lottery. If those kids are under 21, Rosemary, and unmarried, and you are married to their father, then they are your stepchildren, and they should have been on your entry, and you should have had photos of them. And it's going to be a problem that will get you disqualified if that's what the case is. If those kids are under 21 and unmarried, and you didn't include them because you've got a US citizen child, right? But you didn't include the kids on your entry, and you're the winner, then you will be disqualified, 100% certain. Rosemary, tell me again. Tell me, exactly how old they are. Are they unmarried? And I think you've ruined your case, Rosemary. To be honest, I hope I'm misunderstanding your situation. But yeah, are the kids under 21? Are they unmarried? If so, they are your stepchildren by marriage. You don't have to adopt them or anything else like that. You have a legal relationship to them that makes you their step-parent, stepmother, and they are your children. They should have been mentioned on the entry form. And there's literally 100%. There is no way around that. There is no fixing that problem. if you've left any derivatives, a spouse or a child, an eligible spouse or a child, off of your entry that should have been on the entry, then you will 100% of the time be disqualified. There's just no point in even wasting the money for the interview, honestly. Okay. I want to say that the background is not lighting enough. So this was the dark photo thing we talked about. So yeah, again, it's a matter of how not lit enough was it. Difficult for me to know how bad it was. How to search the guest if I don't have nobody in the USA? How to search the guest? Okay. So I think you're talking about where will you go and stay, who will host you, and that sort of thing. Well, you can talk to your friends and family and see if they know someone that you can trust. So maybe do that before you have to think about where you're going to stay. Okay. If somebody doesn't have any kids, should we put 0 in the box? Yes, that's how you do it. Ron, in those cases, the case number range get refused. Does this give an opportunity for those outside the number range, considering there is quota for the region? Yeah, absolutely. That's how it works, Ron. But what I did in that video that we discussed earlier and that you've watched is I calculated the number of people that were possibly eligible for an interview. That was 1157. And out of those 1157, 619 cases went for interview. And those 619 cases included 1,550 people, right? And of those 1,550 people, 1,100 were issued visas. 450 people were either refused or put on 221G or didn't turn up for the interview, right? And so because some of those people got refused, then it meant that they could continue to schedule some appointments. And that's how we got as high as 619 cases, right? But the quota for Oceania was only supposed to be about 900 for DV 2024, and they issued 1,100. So they went way over the quota. So I've already factored into my math the fact that some people will be disqualified, some people will be refused, some people won't turn up. I've factored all of that into my math. So it already includes that assumption. And it happens the same way every year. Every year there are people that don't turn up for the interview. Every year there are people who are refused, and you can roughly sort of calculate those things. But what I did was I used a method that already includes those assumptions. Planet Tech, DV25 AF7000 from Ethiopia. My grade 12 document contains 2 spelling errors, and I've received a court letter verifying the spelling mistakes and officially declaring my correct name. So that should be okay. That's kind of like what I was discussing a few minutes ago, right? If the country I applied has no zip code number, what should I do when filling the DV form? There is no zip code, don't fill it in. Simple as that. Hi, Simon. I'm DV25 winner. I want to ask about not putting my middle name. Can I, but in the embassy? No, you need to fill in the form properly. It needs to be your correct legal name. If that's part of your legal name, it should be there, because they're going to do a background check based on your full name, including your middle name. And if you didn't tell them the name and they do a background check, and then you turn up at the interview and actually you say, oh, they didn't have my full name, then the consular officer has to make a decision whether to trust the background check that was done already on your case, but maybe didn't find you because you didn't give the middle name, or whether he says, well, then we're going to have another background check, and it's going to take another month or 2 months of delay. And here's a form called the DS5535, and we'll check that out. Or he could just disqualify you straight away for not following the process correctly. So, don't do that. Like, if you've got a middle name, if it's part of your legal name, list it on the form, on the DS260. Peter, greetings from down under. I was thinking you must be awake. Recently had my foreign degrees credentialed to US standards. I wonder if the cost of a US education excuse the pun, A cheaper foreign degree. Okay. I wonder if the costs of a US education trump a cheaper education, a cheaper foreign degree with less recognition. Basically, yes. If I understand the question. American employers would rather see a candidate with an American education. Very often, people say to me, for example, I've got to do one more year to finish off my degree, and therefore I want to delay coming to America. And my answer to those people is always, you're doing it wrong. Get your ass over to America, transfer your credits to America, and graduate from a school in America, from a college in America, right? By transferring your credits there, you can do that. They'll accept you, and you only have to repeat a little bit of the work that you've done, let's say, right? And then you get a degree from an American university. That is considered better normally than a degree from a foreign institution. And how do they evaluate degree courses? Well, some of them will look at these evaluations of universities throughout the world. And, there are sometimes thousands of universities on these lists where it will list every university, and it will have, University of San Diego, UC Davis, and Stanford University, or MIT, all those will be at the top, right? And way, way down on the list somewhere is going to be the University of Adelaide or something, or, the Sydney U, or, or the University of Botswana or something like that. And those are not known to American employers. And so they're going to be somewhat disadvantaged. That candidate will be somewhat disadvantaged because their degree, I couldn't tell you whether the University of Adelaide is a decent school or not, or what their specialization is. So, whereas I could tell you that if you come to me and I'm interviewing you and you've got a degree from MIT, I know exactly who that is, right? If you got a degree from Oxford or from Cambridge in the UK, I know exactly who that is. So unless you're coming from a university that has an international reputation as being one of the well-known universities within the world, and there are very few even from Europe, let alone down under, right? Unless you've got a very highly rated college or university, it's going to be difficult to support, that to an American employer. And bear in mind also that, some of these employers are just using nothing but AI tools to screen all of the candidates. And again, it could well be that they look at that and say, oh, University of Mobolongo, Western Australia or something, and they're going to think, well, that sounds like nonsense. It doesn't sound like a real school. It might be a very, very good college, might be a very good university that I just made up, but Crocodile Dundee U is not going to be, considered to be a very good university off the top of the bat, right? So yeah. It's good that you credentialed it to an extent if you were applying for a job that relies on the education. The job I think you're going for, I don't think requires that. So, but I recognize that you're doing everything to over-prepare, right? So that's fine. It's not a bad idea. I have a wife and kid. Congratulations. I want to play as married. You are married, so you will play as married. After I submit mine, my wife also plays her as married. Is it okay? Yeah, exactly. That's what you're supposed to do. Abraham, we already talked to. That's interesting. Sharon, if someone is denied a visa by the officer, can they apply again the following year? Yes, they can. A couple more questions, and then we'll call it a day, right? I'm currently attending college, but I haven't graduated yet. What should I list as my education status? In the DV entry, there is I think it says something like some university courses, something like that. That's what you would list. You've had some university education. Okay. Hi, sir. Please, what number limit did Cameroon take last year for DV24? Did they exceed 100? Cameroon did, yeah. I don't know what their number, how many they got offhand. You can check at Zarthisis's site. Okay. Let's see. Would a flight attendant for 20 be classed as good work experience? Flight attendant for 20 years. I would be willing to bet that that's not going to meet the education level. Let me just check. You see, how long does it take to train to be a flight attendant? All right. Is it 2 years? No. It's about 4 weeks, 6 weeks or something. Flight attendants. Okay, has an SVP of 2, job zone 2. Right. So it's not, it doesn't, you can have 50 years experience in that job. It doesn't help you qualify for the DV lottery because the job zone, the rating of that job, the amount of preparation needed for that job is not high enough. It's a job zone 2. So no, you can't qualify for DV lottery as a flight attendant. Okay. Delphin. Yes, it's me. It was a panic due to the end of the fiscal year. Yeah, I sort of read between the lines a little bit. You didn't exactly say that in the messages, but not knowing the baby could enter the States without a visa. Yeah. Anyways, consider myself a good student of yours, but missed that, Del. Yeah, sorry about that, Del. Yeah, they'll have to live with the consequences. Funnily enough, one thing they could do, by the way, is leave the country, go back home. I suspect she's too close to the birth now to be traveling. But if they went back home, because they're now legal permanent residents, right? So they could go back home, they could have a baby abroad, and as long as they return to America, and bring the baby back next time, that baby again will be processed at the airport for the green card. So, but it's not a great idea to travel on a plane at 8.5 months. And some airlines will just refuse to carry that person. So yeah, you're kind of stuck. All right, then let's call that a day. I think I've taken a lot of questions today, done about an hour and 15 minutes here. So hopefully I got to your question. If I missed your question and you still need help, please do send me your questions at britsimonsays.com. It's a blog that I've been running for over 10 years, and I've answered, I think about last time I checked, I've answered over 300,000 questions at that blog over the last 10 years. And I'm not kidding. That's the number of questions I've answered. Only me. There is no big team answering questions. It's just me. Right. So that's, that's kind of an indication of, how much time I've spent. And I'm more than happy to do it. So by all means, go ahead and ask your questions. I don't do any consulting or I don't charge fees. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just doing this to try and help people through this process. So, I consider it to be a good thing to do, and that's important to me. Okay, everybody, have a great day. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and ask any questions at BritSimonSays.com. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.